Joining us now is Ojy Okpe with stories around the world, trending around the world. Hello,
Ojy.
Ojy.
They are trending. Hi, how are you? Good morning, Dr. Abati. I always love your red tie.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ojy.
Good
how
morning,
are you today?
Leila. How are you?
Great
I'm doing great. Well, good morning to you viewers. We begin what's trending today in Gombe State, Nigeria, where COVID-19 patients staged a protest at a federal teaching hospital, destroying some equipment in their ward. On Tuesday, the patients under quarantine were said to have complained of ill treatment. And according to reports, while the protest at the hospital was ongoing, some other patients at Kwandon, an isolation center in a different local government area of the state, took to the streets, also lamenting poor treatment. The patients blocked roads, chanting anti-government songs. Some of them reportedly went to unknown locations after the protest, while others returned to the center. Many users on social media have shared their concern. A tweet from Senator Sani Shehu said, read, the protest by COVID-19 patients in Kwandon, Gombe State over neglect is avoidable and unfortunate. The nation's response to this pandemic is still superficial and peripheral. Another user, Tolu Ogulisi, wrote, weirdest thing I watched today, COVID-19 positive patients on a protest in Gombe, joined by crowd from community protesting substandard food and treatment at isolation center. They all blocked a major highway. Now there is possibility an entire community in need of quarantine.
I think he literally hit the nail on the head there, because now there is the possibility that an entire community does need to go into quarantine. It's really scary to see this.
Well, I mean, what happened in Gombe State yesterday was quite frightening. To see COVID-19 patients who were supposed to be in isolation centers joining members of the community to protest. Right. Only God knows the number of other people that will have been infected yesterday. But at the same time, I think the response of the state government is not in order, because the Commissioner for Information in the state has been quoted as saying that almost all those COVID-19 patients, as they are called, at the Kwandon Isolation Center, that they are asymptomatic, and that is why they've not been given drugs. Now, is that in conformity with the protocols that we know? I thought that if persons are asymptomatic, the thing to do is to ask them to isolate themselves, and they do not need to be officially quarantined by government. Now, one, what are their complaints? They say they've not been given drugs. Two, they've not been given food. They are starving. And one of the ladies said, look, although they are fasting, they don't even get food when they are supposed to get food. And then three, they complain that there is a particular patient who has a wound, you know, and that the smell is so offensive, they would rather have that person removed. Now, the state government, rather than dismiss their complaints, should try to look into these complaints and check what the standard protocol is. And that is why I think that the NCDC must communicate better with all these state governments setting up isolation centers about critical care protocols, because there doesn't seem to be enough communication and understanding in that regard. And then the other thing is that it wasn't only in Gombe State that there was protest. Also in Bauchi, you know, the COVID-19 patients at the isolation center there, I've also been saying that they are not getting enough food, or the quality of food is not good enough, and that they are not being well treated. Although in the case of Bauchi State, the state government says the matter has been addressed and it has been resolved, and we want to hope so.
But I don't understand how that could be a situation of ill treatment for COVID-19 patients. I mean, this is an infectious disease. This is something that you should take into consideration, first of all. And plus, the people that were protesting, I think it is completely uncalled for at this point. I mean, there are ways that you can go about protesting, not coming out knowing that you are infectious and you're possibly going to infect a whole community. I mean, they claim they are asymptomatic, like you could see most of them, because I watched the news last night. I think a television station carried it as well. And you could see that they were clearly okay, but I mean, you have family members, you have a phone, you can talk to people. I mean, this is our responsibility as well. I mean, it's completely irresponsible.
I agree with you.
I mean,
yeah, I do agree with you on that.
Everything cannot be about the government. It's unfair, completely unfair.
But I do think there also has to be some sort of assurance in terms of minimal standards, in terms of our isolation centers, so that we can also avoid these situations. Because if the case is true, and we're also looking at a populace that we have said again and again don't understand the real depth of COVID-19, and it's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's societal, and it's not their fault. Then we can see that there's a bigger issue here. But this is why the federal government have also raised questions about whether perimeter fencing is enough for isolation centers. It's proving not to be. They're saying they need to look into extra military surveillance, etc. It's a huge worry. It's a huge worry. Yes, everybody does have to take personal responsibility.
Well,
I agree on that.
The bigger issues are as follows. One, both governments and the people in many parts of the country are still in denial.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter the amount of information you provide about what is going on in Europe and other parts of the world. People still don't believe. Two, the other bigger issue is this lack of trust between government and the people. And you have seen that, you know, either in Ojy or in Gombe State, or even in terms of the conduct of the people after the easing of the lockdown. The people just simply do not trust government. You know, and that's part of the problem. And long term, government, in being more accountable, should try to build the confidence of the people in the ability of those in power to provide quality leadership.
Very well said. Let's take another story in Nigeria. Pastor Ojy Okpe, founder of Christ Embassy Church, has called out pastors for shutting down their churches in compliance with the federal government's ban on religious gatherings. While addressing his congregation in a now viral telecast, the pastor said that Jesus will not visit any church that is COVID-19 compliant. Well, let's take a listen.
Let me tell you another one, so you understand what's coming. I told you, I tell you the news before it happens. Okay? Do you ever hear of COVID-19 compliant churches? That's coming. COVID-19 free churches, or in some places they be called COVID-19 compliant churches, and then COVID-19 free churches. And if you allow your church to be that labeled, it's not the Church of Jesus Christ. COVID-19 compliant churches will mean churches that people who are infected with COVID-19 cannot come there. Is the Church of Jesus Christ not a place of healing? Okay. So those of you who love to run around government officials to get your validation, go and get COVID-19 compliant registration for your church. That's the last day Jesus will be in that church.
Well, I mean, Pastor Ojy Okpe has been quite controversial in this season of COVID-19. The other time, he was linking COVID-19 to 5G, technology, communications technology, and that created a lot of, furore in the public space. And now he's saying that churches should not follow federal government guidelines, because that's more or less what he's saying.
Yes.
He's saying that, people should not close down their churches. They should dare the federal government. They should open their doors to COVID-19 patients, because in his view, the Church of Christ is a place of healing. And so pastors, should help to heal. So at one level, is recommending lawlessness. At a second level, is defying the federal government. Has he opened his own church in defiance of the federal government's guidelines?
Well, that's what he's pushing for.
And then three, he talked about compensation. He said the people who have closed their churches is because they've been promised some compensation by the federal government. I hope that is not the case, that indeed some churches have been promised compensation, because federal government should not compensate any place of religious worship. The people who go to the places of religious worship also deserve to be protected. He made another point in the course of that video, the full-length video, that people should be suspicious of the testing procedure that is being adopted. Now, as Pastor Chris Odeakulome, is he a molecular biologist that is offering authoritative comments from the pulpit about science? So I think religious leaders should be very careful.
Very careful
about how they mislead people.
I mean,
starting with
Chris Oyakhilome. I mean, he'd come under fire and he had apologized for the statement he made about 5G. And this is another statement that I believe that he should apologize for, because I don't think
an apology isn't enough.
I mean, people are saying on Twitter, the church is a place of healing. I mean, also the isolation center, there are a lot of COVID-19 patients there. You should go there and heal them, since you're able to, you know, heal.
An apology simply is not enough. You cannot just go by making false claims and suggestions and getting away with it, knowing you're in a position of influence. It is wrong, and he does need to be looked at and sanctioned in some way, as far as I'm concerned. It can't even be entertained.
No, it shouldn't. Honestly. Nothing happened the last time he said.
Honestly.
About 5G.
Ojy, thanks for today's updates.
Thank you, Dr. Bati.
See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.